Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
Hello, welcome back. Apologies about that. In true high-quality professional podcast world, I had to have my tea. So, obviously, you may not know that because of the short break that may or may not be edited into this particular episode in between my first recording and this one. But yes, I have now had me salmon fillet with me rice and a little chocolate pudding for dessert because why not? And I'm here to talk about all things championship playoffs, the richest playoffs in the world for now, the right to finish bottom next season with about 12 points, supposedly. It doesn't sound quite as exciting now, I'll put it like that, really. Right, but obviously, look, first off, massive congratulations to Leeds United and Burnley. Leeds United, look, they get some flack from pretty much every other fan of every other club in England and some abroad. Hey, look, I spent 3 years in Huddersfield. They don't like Leeds very much. There was a lot of very unkind chants towards Leeds fans or about Leeds United that I will admit I took part in as somebody who went to watch Huddersfield Town or generally had friends that weren't Leeds fans. Obviously, I had friends that were Leeds fans as well, and they didn't much like us singing that. That was back when Leeds were in League One. They're back in the Premier League now, and they're a massive football club, and I personally hope they stay there. I obviously, last time they went down, it was, look, I totally appreciate that, it was 2023, and if they had stayed up that day, then Everton would have gone down as an Evertonian. I wouldn't have wanted that for obvious reasons. So it was kind of a case of, don't want Leeds to go down, but they kind of have to if we want to stay up. So that was unfortunate. But no, I think Leeds are a huge football club, and they've got, if you get it right there, you've got huge potential to get them back, not just, staying in the Premier League, but Europe. I mean, you look at, with the great respect, some of the clubs that are battling for Europe now, and look at their very good teams. They are wonderfully run football clubs. You do that with Leeds, with the fan base they've got, where there was, about 100,000 people, probably even more, on the streets of Leeds celebrating a promotion. Obviously a title win, but promotion. I mean, come on, and with the expansion supposedly of Ellen Road, about 50-odd thousand, 53, 54, 55,000. I mean, they're such a huge supported club. So great to have Leeds back, and also great to have Burnley back. Look, I will eulogise about them as well. I think Burnley are a big club. It mustn't be forgotten, Burnley are 2 times champions of England. Obviously not for a long time, but, hey-ho, they've won as many league titles as Tottenham have. And, no, they're a proper founding member type football league / big Lancashire football club, like your Blackburns. And I know they don't want to be compared to Blackburn Rovers much, Burnley, and I'm sure Blackburn don't want to be compared to Burnley, but, look, they're both great clubs that I would love to see back in the Premier League together, but that's not going to happen. Not this season anyway. And there's something nice about having, from my perspective anyway, having some northern clubs back in the league, because there has been very much a feeling this year with obviously the 4, I'm not going to say Northwest Giants because I don't believe that, there's only 4 big Northwest clubs, and also I wouldn't class us in the same bracket as Liverpool, United and City right now. Maybe United, as in we're bottom half of the Premier League, but, that's about as far as that goes. But in terms of, us, Liverpool, United, City and Newcastle really being the only properly northern football clubs in the Premier League this year, it's been lacking, and it's good to have Leeds and Burnley back up. One is, former champions of the old Football League. Leeds, of course, the last champions in 1992 before it became the Premier League. And just big clubs with big fan bases up north. It feels kind of more traditional, and it feels less like what did somebody from the Athletic describe the Premier League as a bit this season, a UCAS form. It feels less like a UCAS entry form and more like an actual Football League next season, the Premier League. But who will be joining Daniel Farke's Leeds machine and Scott Parker's Burnley defensive rock? They are terrible ways to describe those football clubs, I'm so sorry. Well, it was very nearly Sheffield United coming up. As I put on Twitter a while back, I think Sheffield United lost to Burnley, and that was the day that confirmed both Burnley and Leeds' promotion to the Premier League. Obviously, both clubs on 100 points. Just before we move on, Burnley, you got 100 points and 16 goals conceded. How on earth do you not win the league with that? Well, Leeds is why, and it shows how good Leeds are, but they can also get 100 points and still go ahead of a team that's conceded 16 goals by beating them on goal difference. That's ridiculous. Anyway, those 7-0 and 5-0 wins looking pretty blooming useful right now for Leeds United. Doesn't matter, they both end up in the Premier League. Regardless, Sheffield United, as I was saying, it shouldn't be forgotten that Sheffield United started the season with a 2-point deduction. Now, I know it's only a 2-point deduction, it's not a 10-point deduction, or like Luton Town all those years back, a 30-point deduction, or that club in Wales that got deducted about 100 and something points, Pontypridd United or something. That is insane. Anyway, the fact that they started on -2 and that they took it to the last few games of the season with these two teams, Leeds and Burnley, is an absolute testament to Chris Wilder, testament to the Sheffield United squad, to the performance they put in this season, the fact that at one point they were going to win the whole thing, even with the points deduction. It was like, okay, people actually, to the point where people actually forgot and didn't talk about the fact they had 2 points deducted off them, because it was like, they're just going to win the league anyway. And when you think about just how bad, and I know it's horrible to say this, but just how bad they were in the Premier League the previous year. They conceded over 100 goals, I think, in the end, or near as damn it. I think it was one of the worst, if not the worst, defensive record and possibly the worst goal difference in a 38-game top-flight / Premier League history. And the points total wasn't that much better than Derby 2007-8 or the, at the time recording, current Southampton team. Obviously, that one very much subject to change, potentially. When you think about they've come from that, lost some players who have moved on, and obviously it goes without saying, very sadly, of course, George Baldock, who moved to Panathinaikos and then passed away tragically. He'll hopefully be watching down on them and hoping they can get through this playoff campaign. But for them to have rebuilt with experienced championship players, or at least high quality players that have got promotions on the CV. Kiefer Moore was at Ipswich last season. The goalkeeper Michael Cooper was at Plymouth when they won the League One title a couple of years ago. There are other players as well who've had solid. Gustavo Hamer, obviously solid championship performer with Coventry in the past, and there's a lot to like about this Sheffield United team, and there's a lot to like about Chris Wilder if you like him. Obviously, Sheffield Wednesday fans won't. He speaks his mind on a lot of things, and I can see why Sheffield United fans, as one of their own, absolutely love him. But yeah, look, credit to the job they've done to be in this position with a point deduction. Okay, it's only 2 points, but hey, it's still 2 points that they've earned on the pitch that they've not had on the points tally on the table, which psychologically can mess with you. But they look a little bit off it now with defeats to the likes of Oxford and Millwall and Plymouth coming into the end of the season, as if they've kind of known they ran out of legs and the automatic promotion games up. That defeat to Burnley when they had to win, of course, confirming what we knew, that they were consigned to the playoffs. And they'll be facing Bristol City, who, for years, the meme has been, and the conversation was in the last week or so before the end of the Championship season that could we end up with Bristol City in the playoffs and Preston relegated, what happens to the Championship? Because Bristol City and Preston have been like 12th and 13th in the Championship for about the last 15 years. They haven't, obviously, but it feels like it. And Bristol City, to be fair, have surprised a lot. I didn't have them down to do much. I didn't think they'd struggle. And I like Liam Manning as a manager. I do want to shout out, not that Liam Manning will necessarily want me to mention this, obviously, but I don't think he listens, that for anybody to, and this is a real serious, I know football is serious and we do a lot of discourse on it, but this is a genuinely serious thing. For anybody in any walk of life to have lost their child, and Liam Manning and his wife lost their young boy Theo earlier on, I think it was towards the back end of last year, but earlier, within this season anyway, to have lost a child and to have obviously had to take time away to grieve and to process that, and to come back and to have done any job at all, to be quite honest, regardless, to have come back to your work and to have not to have done anything. I mean, the fact that you are a high-profile football manager in the second division of English football sort of puts that into the spotlight and laser focus a bit more than just if you were somebody working in an office. You know, regardless of who you are and your status in the world, that is a horrible thing to have to go through. And I can't imagine the challenges of having to go back to work after that and try and get back to some kind of normality when your home life is just not. I can't imagine the horror that will have befallen him in his home life, and the feelings that will have brought to him and his family. But to have guided a football team to the playoffs, and comfortably in the end, they were obviously fifth, I think, going into the final day. They finished sixth with the draw at home to Preston. Look, besides the point, he's taken Bristol City into the Championship playoffs with. It's a good side. It's a solid Championship team full of solid Championship players, but they're not the most fashionable. You'd argue that clubs that finish below them, the likes of your West Broms and your Norwiches, are bigger clubs that are more fashionable within the Championship. You'd argue maybe even the likes of Blackburn were in better form for a time under Valerian Ismail. There's a thing to be said that Middlesbrough, you know, are a bigger club with bigger resources, which I would say they are, than Bristol City. So to have guided Bristol City into the playoffs, just generally, but off the back of such a family tragedy, is a massive credit to Liam Manning. And regardless of what happens between now and the end of this playoff campaign, he can be incredibly proud of what he's done with our football club this season, because nobody should have to go through what he's been through. And yeah, whether they go all the way and make the Premier League or whether they go out to Sheffield United, he's already... I'm not going to say he's already won, because obviously it's horrible what he's been through, but he's already proved everything he can possibly can. And this Bristol City team have proved everything to everyone, regardless whether they go up or not, in those circumstances, because they all will have felt the loss of young Theo, I'm sure. And yeah, I mean, it's an emotional story that I'm sure Bristol City fans and many, many fans up and down the country will hope continue all the way to Wembley, and for their sake, I hope it does. But back to the playoffs in hand and more light-hearted matters, certainly more light-hearted matters. When you weigh up Sheffield United and Bristol City's just talent pool, when you look at their respective points tallies, you look at their respective seasons, Sheffield United pushing for the top two sides and nearly going up automatically, and Bristol City sort of being sort of, okay, they would have been a goal away from dropping out the playoffs if Blackburn had got a winner, ironically, at Sheffield United on the final day. I think Bristol City need to get a very positive result at Ashton Gate in the first leg. They need to win. And I would say they need to win by at least 2 goals at Ashton Gate. Now, I'd heard that Bristol City have only lost 3 games at home all season. One of those was a late defeat to Sheffield United, but they did get to Bramall Lane and draw. But head-to-head, Sheffield United have got it over them. And I just think there's more talent in the Sheffield United team. I like some of the Bristol City players. You know, I heard they've still got Nahki Wells. He's still knocking around. I didn't realise he was still in the Championship, but fair play. Anis Mehmeti's a solid Championship player. The young lad George Earthy on loan from West Ham looks a very solid player. They've got Scott Twine, who's a dead ball specialist. He's lethal. You know, they've got, though, but when you read through the names of Bristol City squad list, which I will let you do if you want to, I'm not going to read them out, they are, because they've been a Championship club for so long, it doesn't scream, oh wow, they've got such and such a player who's been in the Premier League necessarily. They've probably got some Premier League experience in that squad, but it's a very, very Championship squad that's done well for itself to get into the playoffs. And I do think that Sheffield United are just stronger. And if they don't get a win, Bristol City at Ashton Gate, and the first leg, I don't see how they, say, draw the home game, go to Bramall Lane and get a result, because I think Sheffield United will be bang up for it at Bramall Lane. So I'm tipping, sorry to say for those of you that want somebody a bit different in the Premier League, which I know there's been a lot of you going, oh, can we have Bristol City in? Or when Millwall were in with a shout, or, you know, whoever, oh, we don't want the same teams back in the Premier League, which, you know, sure, I understand that argument completely, but I think you've also got to take that kind of emotional side out of it sometimes and go, okay, Bristol City might do it. I'm not saying they won't, but my feeling is very much one that Sheffield United are going to be stronger over two legs. They may not win both games, but even if Bristol City win the first leg 1-0, I can totally see with the firepower and the options Sheffield United have got going forward, they're spoilt for choice, really. And if they're firing, they could overturn a 1-0 deficit at Bramall Lane quite comfortably. I just think Sheffield United will get through to the final, which moves on to the other semi-final, which again, I know this sounds ridiculously obvious in a way. It relies again on a strong home performance in the first leg, but not in the way that Bristol City are relying on getting something in the first leg to see out the second leg. Coventry v Sunderland now. Wow, okay. Coventry at the is it still the Rico? The CBS, sorry, the Coventry Building Society Arena, have been quite something this year. They're not the most spectacular team in the world, obviously under Mark Robbins. It all went pear-shaped for so many reasons, and I thought when they got Frank Lampard in, they were absolutely buggered, personally, because he can't organise a defence. However, he's learned, certainly in the Championship, how to organise a defence, and it's taken them back to his Derby days of 2019, albeit I think this team, despite not having the star quality that Derby team would have, the likes of Tomori and Mason Mount on loan from Chelsea, it's got some real solid foundations of a team that's been built up over a few years under Mark Robbins. Obviously made the playoff final in 2023, losing to Luton, of course. Then made the semi-final, at Wembley against Man United, and really should have won that game. It's a team that's been having some big occasions in the last few years, and for a club that has been absolutely on its backside down in League Two and playing home fixtures at Birmingham City and Northampton in years gone by, it's fantastic to see Coventry City back as a proper football club, fighting for positions to get back into the Premier League. A real nostalgia hit for kids of the 90s like myself who remember Coventry until 2001 and Highfield Road being an absolute bugger of a place to go to, under the likes of Big Rob Atkinson and Gordon Strachan back in the day. But this isn't 1997 anymore. It hasn't been for quite a while, if you haven't noticed. Coventry could come out and kill this game in the first leg. Seriously, whereas Bristol City might just need to get something to take into the Bramall Lane, Coventry could kill this game in the first leg because they want this. You can see they may not have the best form going into it, but there's something about this Coventry side and the belief around the club and the fan base, and they've got a huge fan base, very vocal fan base on social media. They're a fantastic set of supporters. They absolutely... I'm not saying the other clubs don't want this. Obviously, Bristol City, Sunderland and Sheffield United want it as well, naturally. But I think there's a real raw emotion to Coventry, the story of the club missing out on the playoffs 2 years ago, having gone down to League Two, having been locked out their own ground. The whole issue with Wasps Rugby Club, who themselves have gone to the wall now, absolute mess that Coventry City have been for the last 15 or so years, whenever it was they moved out to Highfield Road, which in my opinion they should never have done. It was a perfectly fine stadium for what they needed. Coventry could go 3-0 up in this first leg. And I say that, one, because Coventry at the CBS are really, really up for this. And Sunderland. Oh, right. I'm gonna say I've got a real soft spot for Sunderland. I know Everton and Sunderland fans get on quite well on social media. I for one could go upstairs now into my big box of football shirts and pick out the Bradley Lowry Foundation Sunderland shirt that I bought, which obviously there was a lot of work done between Everton and Sunderland and the Bradley Lowry Foundation, and there still is. But I think also there's a lot of connections between Everton and Sunderland, ex-players, ex-managers. Obviously, Moyes was manager at Sunderland. Peter Reid, big connection, loved by both sets of fans. There's so many connections. And I would love, if I had to just pick a club out of the four to come into the Premier League, it would be Sunderland, because they are a monumentally big football club. 48,000 fans in the stadium. I think at one point they got 40,000 against Bradford City in League One. That's ridiculous. You get the Time Weird derby back, which is one of the best derbies in the country. Okay, Newcastle financially are a different level to them, but my God, that's, it's always worth watching. They're just a bloody big football club with a fantastic fan base, like I say, and it would be great to have them back. And Regis Lebris, is that, by the way, Regis Lebris, is that how you pronounce his name? Because that's what, at first it was, is it Reggie Lebris? Is it Reggie Lebris? Is it Regis Lebris? Is it Reggie Lebris? I don't know. But I think because he's Breton in France, you actually pronounce the S's. But it does sound a bit like Brit abroad. Je m'appelle Regis Lebris. I think it is actually how you pronounce it, but, Regis Lebris has done an amazing job. No one really knew much about him outside of French football. He'd done, not brilliantly at Lorient, but clearly Sunderland done their due diligence. The guy who owns the club, I think he's got connections with Marseille, so he knows his French football a bit. And he's brought in some talented players as Lebris, not least Enzo Lefebvre. How on earth they've landed Enzo Lefebvre from Roma on loan with an option to buy if they go up, I don't know. If they go up and they sign him, he's a hell of a bloody player. He'll be one to watch. But Sunderland, they were up there with the other three. Your Leeds, your Burnley, your Sheffield Uniteds, Christmas time, New Year. And it was a case of, which two of these four? And Sunderland, they've kind of been the Championship's version of Wycombe. As in, I didn't say this about Wycombe, but how do I put this? They've kind of got to a point where you could fight for automatic promotion, or you're basically in the playoffs. So just kind of settle for that. And some have almost kind of gone, well, we are the most fourth team that ever did fourth from about March onwards, and gone, sod it. We're basically in the playoffs. Let's just go on the beach for a bit. And that playoff purgatory for me, which is a great way of describing it, because it's been like Schrodinger's playoff. It's like, is the season over? Is it not? We're in the playoffs, but there's still like 10 games to go or something ludicrous. We're not going to get third. We're not going to come fifth. What do we do? Well, apparently it's lose constantly. Good Lord. Their form's been shambolic since they got into the playoffs. And my concern isn't so much that they're not in great form coming into the playoffs. It's that, can they... I think I'm going to steal a metaphor from not the top 20. I've listened to their championship preview. I haven't listened to the whole lot of it at the moment, but the metaphor being, can they turn that tap on so instantly? You know, they couldn't turn it round in games against the likes of Oxford and QPR towards the end of the season. Now, with respect, Oxford, who have been battling relegation, and QPR, whose manager's been on gardening leave, if you can't get results there to say to your fans, this is under control, we know what we're doing, we're going to go in with some form, we're going to be hot, we're going to be ready to pounce. They're going into this completely cold, and I think physically and psychologically, that is so hard to have gone on the run of form they've been on, having started and been so good to come fourth. They're obviously a very good side, they've come fourth in the league. And they've got some incredible players. Not least, you know, Joe Bellingham, who is, not just saying because of his brother, he actually is a really good footballer in his own right, who could quite easily command the Premier League move in the summer if he doesn't go up with Sunderland. How do you go from such a cold, dead, sort of limping over the line? If you limp, can you limp over the line if you've been in the playoffs for the last few months? Confirmed? Not really. You're just kind of coasting along on the beach before you come back for the big stuff, taking a mid-season break. But I don't see how they could have let it go on this long, being this poor, and then just suddenly fire into the playoffs. I could be proven massively wrong here. It could come to the first leg. They could go to Coventry, win 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, whatever. And I am made to look an absolute prick in these predictions. However, and I hope they do make me look a prick, because I do really like Sunderland. I do want them back in the Premier League. I want this to be made absolutely clear. I know we've had Sunderland fans on the pod before. Gary Nant from What a Ball Like. Great lads. Big shout out to you. I just think, how can you come in so cold, and especially Coventry, where they are going to be well up for it. And if they start, and if they are for the first 20 minutes, half an hour, cold as anything, and performing the way they've been performing the last few weeks, last couple of months even, before the end of the regular season, they'll get put away in that first leg. And it will make the second leg up the Stadium of Light, where admittedly Coventry aren't the greatest travellers, and if Sunderland keep it tight and even a 1-0 defeat, you're in with a bloody good shout of turning it round, obviously, in the second leg. But I just don't think gambling on, oh well, lads, keep it tight, and then we'll take them at the Stadium of Light, is going to work. You've got to go toe-to-toe with this Coventry side at their place, because they're going to be up for it. You can't just let them have their moment and then go, well, we'll absolutely Sheffield Wednesday against Peterborough, you know, and come back and smash you 5-1, and then obviously we went to penalties, didn't it? But, you know, you get the idea. You can't just vibes the home leg, come back and just hope for the best. You know, it's not, you know, Liverpool 2019 all over again. I want to desperately say Sunderland will do this, but I just can't see it at the moment. If Sunderland turn up, they will get through. If Sunderland play to their best, they're better than Coventry, in my opinion. But this Coventry team's had more about it under Lampard. The trajectory from being near the bottom under Mark Robbins to skyrocketing up the league under Frank Lampard, and the story of Lampard's redemption, not just Coventry's redemption this season, has been one that's been worth following in the Championship. And I think that will continue. I genuinely think that will continue. And I feel so bad for Sunderland, because I really like them as a club. I've got a lot of time for Coventry, don't get me wrong, obviously. But I've wanted Sunderland back in the Premier League since they came back into the Championship. And this is an opportunity that I feel like they're going to throw away, because their form has been so abject and their performance has been so poor. Again, I hope I'm wrong, for Sunderland's sake, but obviously for Coventry's sake, I hope I'm right. I don't know. You know, like I say, got to be neutral. But whoever comes up is not up to me, obviously, and I don't have a preference in terms of who really comes up, because there's 4 clubs wanting to get to the Premier League, and whoever comes up will deserve it at the end of the day. But I do think Coventry will, again, I might look an absolute prick by saying this, I think Coventry will come out firing first leg, and that will kill the tie, rather than Bristol City coming out firing first leg and it kind of still being 1-0, 2-0, kind of Sheffield United turn this round. It'll be, well, something look absolutely beaten after one game. So that's going to leave it as a Sheffield United Coventry final now. Chris Wilder and Frank Lampard. That's a curious manager matchup in a playoff final to get to the Premier League, isn't it? Really. Chris Wilder with tons of promotions on his CV. Lampard with none. In fact, for that matter, Regis Lebris and Liam Manning have had none either. Lebris didn't get a promotion in France and Manning didn't get Oxford or MK Dons promoted. And Lampard didn't get Derby promoted, so there you go. Whereas I think Wilde's pretty much got promoted. I think Halifax, he was there, Oxford, Northampton. I think he's got promoted most places, although we forget he went to Middlesbrough and Watford for a time. I think I've managed Watford at this point. They've just sacked their managers today. Don't be surprised if you get offered the job, ladies and gentlemen, because they've run out of options. Anyway, Sheffield United Coventry, I mean, this is pure gut feeling. I can see Coventry dominating. Sheffield United in the league table are clearly the fact they finished 2 places above Coventry and a significant chunk of points higher are a much better side.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
But I just get that gut feeling. And I should say that Sheffield United have got this infamous record of having never gone up in the playoffs, ever. They've had, I think, 4 or 5 campaigns in the Championship and 1 campaign in League One where they got to the final and lost to Huddersfield. I think they've had another campaign actually in League One where they missed out. It's like Stevenage or Swindon or someone. Regardless, they've not gone up in the playoffs in the existence of the playoffs, and they've been in plenty in the Championship and League One. However, we must say as well, as to quote, not a top 20 again, sorry, you can tell this is the preview for this bit. I will listen to the other bits, by the way, I just haven't got that far down to the episode. That just because a club has a history of not getting promoted out the playoffs from 20 odd years ago has no bearing on the current side and their current fortunes and the players and the manager and everyone else involved at the club, because it's a completely different set of people involved. The only constant really is the fans and the badge and the club colours and the stadium. That's got nothing to do with the actual players and management that could get the job done. So for me, I think Sheffield United Coventry will be the Championship playoff final. Coventry will win the nation's hearts. They will dominate the game like they did coming back against Man United in the semi-final of the FA Cup last season. But I can see more penalty heartbreak for them. I can see it being like a 1-1 or a 2-2. And I can see Sheffield United more penalty heartbreak at Wembley of Coventry. They lost the, obviously, Fancati Darbo famously missing that penalty that sent Luton up in 2023. Also, shout out to Fancati Darbo. I believe his career went off a cliff after that. Well, we know a bit about him, Troy Deeney and Forest Green. Awful way to treat a player. And then obviously losing to Man United with Anthony giving it the big one for reasons that I can't quite comprehend after being awful against Coventry. But I'm sorry to say this, Coventry fans, if you're only listening, but I do think it will be another Wembley penalty heartbreak. I don't want that to be the case, and I'm sure if Coventry do go up, there'll be a Coventry fan that will go, "Oh, you got this wrong." Well, yeah, that's predictions. I'm not expecting to get any of these right. I mean, Christ, you've listened to my predictions from the National League North and South way up to the Championship. I'm pretty sure I won't get any of these right. Even when you've got an option of 2 or 4 clubs to get from, or 6 clubs to get from, you're still going to get it wrong. But yeah, I think Sheffield United, and it's not the answer people want to hear, I know, unless you're a Sheffield United fan, or, I don't know. Yeah, exactly. But I know people go, "Oh, but Sheffield United back up, they were awful last time, and oh, it's going to be boring, and we don't want the same clubs coming up." And no, but if Sheffield United can come up with the parachute money they've had, and with the Premier League money they've had, and with lessons learned, in the same way that Leeds and Burnley can learn lessons about their recruitment and try and bridge that gap, they've got more chance, in my opinion, of staying in the Premier League than, for example, a Bristol City or Coventry, where Bristol City's last top division season was in like 1975 or something. I could have made that up. It was definitely in the 70s. And Coventry haven't been up into the Premier League since 2001 and have been down in League 2 as recently as about 2018. So it stands to reason that the clubs that have been in the Premier League more recently will have more experience of what not to do in terms of recruitment, in terms of how to use that money and that windfall wisely. I mean, I know we want to see someone different in the league, and Coventry or Bristol City would be, or even Sunderland, would be sort of the nation's kind of emotional choice, but I think using your head, Sheffield United's quality is stronger than the other three. There are players you don't get in Sheffield United's team, I think, that would get into the other three sides, which is the level of quality they are compared to the rest of the playoffs. I'm not saying they'll find Bristol City easy. I don't think they will. And I'm not saying if they do get to the final that they would find Coventry or Sunderland easily, because if Sunderland get through, they're backfiring, and that's a difficult prospect. And if Coventry get through, like I say, I think Coventry would dominate that game, but end up losing on penalties. So, to reiterate my predictions, going way back from the very first part of this, which feels like a long time ago now, mainly because I've been halfway between. So I'm tipping Scunthorpe from the National League North and Boreham Wood from the National League South. I am tipping York City to go up from the National League into League 2. And I am tipping, oh my word, I can't remember now, who did I say? Wimbledon, of course, to go up from League 2 to League 1. I'm tipping Charlton to beat Leyton Orient in the final of the League 1 playoff final to get into the Championship. And then for Sheffield United to scrape past in the most sort of, but the other team deserved it kind of way against Coventry on my tips for the 2025 playoffs coming up in the next few weeks. Let's see how many of these I get right. I'm going to go with absolutely none. I'm going to look like an absolute knob from these predictions, if anyone's getting this far. But hey, it's why we do it, and it's why we love football. I love the playoffs. From way up in the Championship, way down to the lowest leagues. I love seeing teams go up. I love seeing, the permutations of who gets who, and particularly lower down the divisions where you've got to play teams at home grounds in one-off ties, and even in the final, Chester go to Scunthorpe's ground, and Maidstone have got to go to Boreham Wood's ground for the playoff final because that's just the non-league for you. I think that's great. I was watching the video footage just over my tea of the Dover fans and players celebrating their win at Dartford. I mean, to celebrate promotion at the team's ground that you've just beaten, it was phenomenal. There was about 3,000 people there, and there was about a couple of hundred Dover fans. They were having the time of their lives. And this is why we love the playoffs. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot to be said, obviously, for teams that win the league or get promoted automatically. I know I would personally prefer that, but the playoffs are special. They're exciting, aren't they? And whatever happens, we are going to enjoy them. And whether your team's in the playoffs, whether your team wins the playoffs, whether your team's not even in the playoffs, just remember, it's only a game. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.
Thank you, Jim, for your predictions about the Championship playoffs. A thorough description of your predictions there and how you think it'll go. Okay, so over to me, Greg. So we've got Bristol City against Sheffield United tomorrow night, 8 p.m. That's the first playoff game. And then we've got Coventry against Sunderland Friday, the 9th of May, 8 p.m. also. Second legs will be Sheffield United, Bramall Lane, Bristol City, Monday the 12th of May, 8 p.m. And Sunderland, Stadium of Light against Coventry City, Tuesday the 13th of May, 8 p.m. Okay, so I think it's a tough one, isn't it? I do want Bristol City to do it, but it's going to be a tough ask against Sheffield United. They've been somewhat consistent most of the season. I know they were top at one point, weren't they? I'm sure they were a couple of weeks ago, and then one thing and another happened with Burnley and Leeds winning the league. I'm pushing for Bristol City to do it because I don't mind Bristol City at all. Don't mind Sheffield United, apart from I think they wrecked Scotland a few years ago when we played them in League One. I think we beat them at Scotland 2-0. Sheffield United, Grant Holt scored, and I think he was sort of having a bit of fun with the Sheffield fans of what he thought was fun, and then they ripped up the seats and the billboards and all sorts. So don't really want Sheffield United to go up because of that. But I think Sheffield having their second leg at Bramall Lane, that could be the decider there. I think plenty of big atmosphere at Sheffield United, obviously. But yeah, I think Sheffield United win that bracket, if that makes sense. Coventry City against Sunderland is the next bracket. I've got a soft spot for Coventry City. I think Jamie Allen is still there, ex-Rochdale midfielder, top quality player for us anyway. Hopefully he's still doing the business at Coventry City. So I would love Coventry City to go up. I really would. Of the four, it would be Coventry City for me. Got my soft spot for them. It's a tough ask, Sunderland. Sunderland have been trying to get out of this championship for quite a while, haven't they? One way or another. I think they missed out in the playoffs a couple of years ago. They did have quite a young squad at one point. Now I think that's changed. I think it's a blend of different ages of players. I do think Sunderland, again, if you look at the second leg, their second leg for that one is at the Stadium of Light. I think it might be just a bit too much for Coventry. Hope I'm proven wrong. I really do, because Bristol City and Coventry, I would love to see one of those in the Premier League, especially Coventry. So the final there is, for my prediction, Sheffield United against Sunderland. I'm going to go Sunderland. I think I'm going to go for Sunderland to win at Wembley. Get them back in the Premier League. That would be quite a fixture, wouldn't it? Sunderland and Newcastle back as a Premier League fixture. I'd enjoy that, really would. I don't really want Sheffield United going up because it doesn't seem that long ago since they were in the Premier League for me. And I like a bit of variety watching any league, really. I'd like to watch the variety in Sunderland. Yeah, obviously I know they have somewhat of an historical Premier League side. You know, they were in there for a few years, obviously, before relegation. So I think Sunderland will pip it at Wembley against Sheffield United. That's my prediction. I do hope I'm wrong and that Coventry City can get it out of there. And I just think the second legs could be overpowering for Bristol and Coventry in terms of if Sheffield need anything, they're most likely going to get it at their stadium in the second leg. Same for Sunderland. It could be overpowering for Bristol and Coventry. Is it Frank Lampard I'm sure it's... Yes, it is Frank Lampard. I just had to Google there. So yeah, Frank Lampard at Coventry. So it looks as if Betfair have got the favourites to be Sheffield United. Basically, they are suggesting it's hard to trust Coventry or Bristol City on their travels, away games. And there's never been a poorer side than Sunderland. They're out of form, apparently, entering the playoffs. That's unusual. I'm not too sure if that's true. Sheffield United fans have been waiting a long time for success at Wembley, but this looks like an ideal opportunity for the Blades to bounce back at the first time of asking. Under the guidance of boyhood fan Chris Wilder, this may be the perfect time to get the monkey off their back and finally secure promotion via the playoffs. So yeah, it's looking like Sheffield United are the favourites. I'm sure they finished third. I'm pretty certain they did, yeah. Sunderland finished fourth, it looks of it. Coventry fifth, Bristol City sixth. It's going to be... They're always great, the playoffs. Anything can happen, we know that. We've seen some cracking playoffs over the years. I've been to live playoff games many a time. Sometimes the form can go out the window, and you do get the odd team thinking, how the hell have they won this and got to the final? Interestingly enough, I do remember, was it Luton that won the playoffs to get to the Premiership the other year? I'm sure they did at Wembley. Now they're a League One side, which is strange, really. In such a short time frame that they've gone from Premier League to League One. That's something I'll have to speak to Jimmy about on the next podcast. But yeah, that seems unusual. So yeah, I hope you all enjoy the playoffs. It could be anybody's game, really, couldn't it, in terms of anybody. Yeah, as long as Oldham don't do it. And just another side note as well before I leave you on this note. If you could, one of our friends, Femi, has got his own fantasy football YouTube channel. I think it's FMLFem. You should be able to find him on YouTube. Please check out his videos. He's trying to crack into the top 120,000 fantasy football players. I think he's not a million miles off that number as well. He does very well, Femi. I do know he's second in the It's Only a Game Fantasy Football League, and there's 115 people in there. Only Damien Warburton is ahead of him on points. We've got 3 weeks left of fantasy football to decide who's crowned the winner of the It's Only a Game Fantasy Football League. It's looking likely to be Damien Warburton or Femi. But either way, if you could give Femi a follow on YouTube, that's FBLFem, that would be great. So we're going to wrap it up here. Hopefully we're going to get an end of season review with all the gang. Maybe we'll get some guests on as well next time as well. Hopefully we could get Mark back on from Project Football, or somebody else who might be able to get Femi on himself as well. Okay, thank you very much for listening and getting this far. We really appreciate you listening. If you could subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast. We do have a YouTube channel ourselves as well. That should be easy to find. It's Only a Game Podcast. We're on X, Facebook and Instagram. Any support is much appreciated, and thank you very much for listening. And whether you're in the playoffs, whether you're not in the playoffs, whether you've been relegated, or whether you're a mascot of a football club, I don't know. I make these things up on the spot. Just remember, it is only a game.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.